Sometimes the body doesn't shout, it whispers. The signs are quiet. A skipped meal, a distant look, a gift passed down without explanation. If you've noticed your elderly loved one withdrawing, reflecting more, or seeming unusually calm, it may not just be aging. These are the subtle signs that someone may be preparing for life's final chapter. In this video, we explore 8 emotional and physical cues that often appear when the end is near, and how to honor them with compassion, presence, and peace. Let's be honest, talking about death is hard, especially when it involves someone you love. Most of us don't want to go there. We tell ourselves they're just tired, just slowing down, just having a quiet day. And maybe sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes what we're seeing isn't just aging, it's the beginning of a quiet transition, a shift in energy, a letting go. It doesn't always happen with drama or diagnosis. In fact, some of the most telling signs are incredibly subtle. A change in routine, a moment of reflection, a sudden calm that feels out of place. These aren't red alarms. They're gentle whispers from the body and soul. This video isn't about predicting death. It's not about panic or fear or rushing to conclusions. It's about being present, observing with love, listening even when no words are spoken. Our goal today is simple: to help you recognize the quieter signs, to offer insight, not answers, and most importantly, to help you respond with presence, compassion, and peace. Because being there for someone in their final season doesn't mean fixing, it means witnessing. And sometimes knowing what to look for is the greatest gift you can give. One of the earliest and most easily overlooked signs is a quiet withdrawal from social life. It happens slowly, subtly. A missed phone call here, a declined invitation there. And over time you start to notice they're just not as present. The weekly dinners they once looked forward to, suddenly too tiring. The phone calls that used to stretch for hours, now cut short or not answered at all. Even casual visits from friends or neighbors become maybe next time. This isn't necessarily sadness or depression. It's not rejection or resentment. In many cases, it's acceptance, a natural turning inward. As the body begins to wind down, the soul often does too. For some, this withdrawal is instinctual. They're conserving energy, they're reflecting, they're letting go, quietly, gently. And while it might feel confusing or even hurtful to loved ones, it isn't personal. You might see them sit in more silence, watch TV less, stop participating in conversations, even when they're in the room, or they may speak in shorter sentences as though words are becoming less necessary. It's not always obvious at first, but looking back, many families say they started slipping away before they were gone. If you are witnessing this in someone you love, resist the urge to pull them back into your pace. Instead, meet them where they are. Sit with them, even if they don't feel like talking. Hold their hand. Let the quiet be sacred, not awkward. Because this stage isn't about re-engaging. It's about accompanying. It's about honoring their rhythm, respecting their space, and understanding that sometimes the deepest connection happens in silence, not in sound. Another subtle sign that often emerges is a noticeable increase in sleep, not just napping out of boredom or a quiet afternoon doze, but a deeper, more persistent kind of rest. You might hear phrases like, "I'm just tired all the time," or "I didn't sleep well, but I don't feel like getting up either." Days begin to feel shorter, not because of the clock, but because they're simply spent sleeping. This isn't laziness or a lack of interest. It's the body gradually beginning to conserve its energy. Systems slow down, appetite decreases, movement feels heavier, and in response, sleep becomes more than rest. It becomes refuge. There's a difference in the tone and pattern. It's not just sleeping in, it's sleeping through. You may find them dozing through the same hours they used to be most alert, or falling asleep during conversations, meals, or even favorite shows they once watched without fail. And even when awake, their energy feels thinner, they may speak more softly, move more slowly, or simply lack the motivation to do everyday things, like getting dressed, walking to the mailbox, or engaging in a hobby. Sometimes they'll try to explain it. Other times they won't, but you'll feel the shift. This stage doesn't always mean death is near in days. It can unfold over weeks or months, but it often marks a turning point, a signal that the body is drawing inward, prioritizing rest over activity, quiet over stimulation. As a loved one, your instinct might be to cheer them up, get them moving, or reintroduce routine. But often, the most compassionate thing you can do is acknowledge what's happening and gently adjust alongside them. Create calm spaces. Let rest be okay. And most importantly, let your presence be felt, even in stillness. Because when words grow few and days grow short, just being there, without pressure, without fixing, is a powerful kind of love. In these quiet final chapters of life, communication changes. It becomes less about exchanging information and more about expressing emotion, reassurance, and presence. For an elderly loved one who may be approaching the end, the need to feel emotionally safe, seen, heard, and accepted matters more than ever. You might notice them begin to open up about things they hadn't spoken of before. Regrets, memories, fears. Sometimes the words come hesitantly. Other times, in a surprising flood. But what they're really saying is, I need you to witness me. This is not the time for advice, correction, or solutions. It's the time for deep listening. The kind where you let silence settle after their words, where you hold space for tears without trying to dry them, where you reassure them that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Some people confuse strength with silence, but in reality, vulnerability is where strength truly lives. When an older parent says, I'm scared, or I don't want to be a burden, they are offering you something sacred, their truth. And your job is not to erase it, but to hold it gently. When performance drops away, when there's no longer pressure to be upbeat, busy, or independent, intimacy deepens. A hand squeeze, a shared story, a long, quiet glance across the room. These moments say more than any grand gesture ever could. Your presence becomes their comfort. Your calm becomes their courage, and your willingness to let them be fully human, flawed, afraid, and honest creates the kind of emotional safety we all crave, especially near the end. In this season, love doesn't look like fixing. It looks like being soft, being open, being there. Because when everything else fades, what stays is how deeply we allowed one another to feel seen. One of the clearest, yet often misunderstood signs that the body is turning inward is a noticeable change in appetite. Meals that were once routine, sacred, social, or satisfying begin to slip away. You might notice skipped meals, a half-eaten plate, favorite dishes untouched. They might say things like, I'm just not hungry, or food doesn't taste the same anymore. Sometimes they'll brush it off with a smile or a joke. Other times, they'll quietly push the plate away and say nothing at all. But the shift is there. It's important to understand this isn't about pickiness or stubbornness. It's not always about illness either. In many cases, it's the body naturally beginning to let go. As systems slow, digestion becomes more difficult, energy needs decrease, and somewhere deep within, there's an instinct that food is no longer a priority. To loved ones, this can feel jarring. Meals are how we show care, how we gather, how we maintain normalcy. So when a parent or partner suddenly stops eating, it can feel like they're slipping away, right in front of us. And in some ways, they are. But forcing food isn't the answer. What matters most in this moment is respect and presence. Offer nourishment without pressure. Focus on comfort, not calories. Small bites, favorite sips, gentle offerings, given with love, not expectation, because food may no longer be fuel, but it can still be comfort. And your care, in those quiet moments of offering, says more than a full plate ever could. This is not a sign to fear, it's a sign to cherish. A reminder that the body knows its path, and your job, now, is simply to walk beside it, with compassion in every step. As the physical body begins to slow, something else often rises to the surface, a deeper emotional and spiritual reflection. Many older adults, nearing the end, begin to speak more about the past than the present, not just in memory, but in meaning. You might hear stories you've never heard before, moments from childhood, names of long-past relatives, lessons learned through hardship or joy. These aren't just nostalgic recollections, they're often acts of legacy, a way to pass on something important before time runs out. You may also hear more openness about death itself, not in fear, but in calmness. Phrases like, "I've had a good life," or "I just want things to be settled," start to appear. Some will begin putting paperwork in order. Others might ask about who gets a specific item, a book, a ring, a photo album. These gestures are rarely about the object. They're about meaning, memory, and continuity. They might say, "Give this to your daughter when she's older," or "Promise me you'll take care of the garden." What they're really saying is, "I want to be remembered well. I want to leave things whole." This period can feel incredibly tender, and while it may be difficult to hear these conversations, honoring them without brushing them aside is one of the greatest gifts you can give. Listen fully. Ask follow-up questions. Write things down. Let them know their life, every chapter, every scar, every victory, matters deeply. Because in these reflective moments, they're not just letting go, they're handing something over. It's not just an ending, it's a legacy. And your willingness to receive it with open hands and a full heart will stay with them and with you long after the silence. Another quiet yet powerful sign appears when your loved one begins letting go of the physical world around them, not in neglect, but in intention. You may start to hear phrases like, "I want you to have this," or "It's time I passed this along." At first, it might seem like a simple gesture, a ring, a photo, a handwritten recipe folded in half and tucked inside a book. But these are not random gifts. They are offerings of closure. This process often begins gradually. They might start sorting through drawers, cleaning out closets, organizing paperwork that's been untouched for years. Some do it with purpose, settling affairs, making sure things are in order. Others do it with quiet sentiment, placing something meaningful in your hands, not just to give it away, but to transfer a piece of themselves. It may be practical, a will, a folder with insurance documents, medical instructions written in a careful hand. But it can also be deeply emotional. Objects they held onto for decades, now being released not out of obligation, but out of readiness. To some, this behavior might seem morbid, but to those paying attention, it's a profound act of trust. A way of saying, "I want to leave with peace, not chaos. I want you to carry this forward." When these moments arrive, receive them with reverence. Don't rush to say, "You're not going anywhere." Instead, say, "Thank you. This means a lot." Because this isn't about giving up. It's about letting go with intention. It's about control, dignity, and ensuring that what mattered to them doesn't disappear. It continues. And in that passing down, something beautiful lives on. Not just their things, but their love, their story, and their hope that you will carry them forward. There often comes a moment when conversations about the future begin to fade, not with sadness, but with quiet finality. Your loved one may stop talking about the holidays. A birthday might come up, and they'll say, "I probably won't be around for that." Plans that once gave them purpose, vacations, graduations, even family gatherings, no longer hold the same weight. And it's not forgetfulness, it's a shift in focus. They begin to live more in the moment, not in a hurried, bucket list way, but in a deeply present way. The calendar loses meaning. The clock softens. What matters is today. A warm breeze through the window. A conversation that feels complete. A meal shared slowly. They may even skip traditions they once loved, not because they've stopped caring, but because they're letting go of what's next. The mind starts to detach from obligations and events that extend too far forward. And while this can be hard to witness, it is often a natural part of the transition process. What they need now isn't reminders about what's coming, it's comfort in what already is, reassurance that it's okay to slow down, that they don't have to pretend to be excited about things they no longer have the energy or the desire to plan for. You may feel tempted to cheer them into re-engagement, but sometimes the most loving thing you can do is simply accept this new pace. Talk with them about now, about memories, about peace, and let them guide the conversation without pressure to look too far ahead. Because in this quiet turning inward, they are not giving up. They're tuning in to what matters here and now. And your presence in that space becomes more powerful than any plan could ever be. As the physical body begins to slow and the future becomes less about planning and more about presence, something else often emerges, a quiet but powerful spiritual awareness. You might notice a shift in your loved one's conversations, a greater interest in prayer, meditation, or simply sitting in silence. They may begin to reflect more openly on questions about life's meaning, what comes after, or what they hope their legacy will be. They may describe vivid dreams, reunions with long-lost loved ones, peaceful landscapes, or comforting presences they can't quite explain. Sometimes they'll speak of feeling watched over, protected, or guided in a way they never mentioned before. These aren't always religious moments. Sometimes they're deeply personal, quiet, and hard to put into words, but you'll feel it, a softening, a kind of calm that wasn't there before. This shift doesn't always mean your loved one is preparing for immediate death, but it often signals that they've entered a place of emotional readiness, a stage of life where the spiritual takes precedence over the material, where curiosity replaces fear, where peace begins to outweigh uncertainty. You may even notice it in the way they carry themselves, a stillness in their voice, a slowness in their eyes, a deep exhale, as if their soul has started to let go before their body does. And while it can be emotional to witness, it can also be incredibly comforting, because in those moments, when they light a candle, whisper a prayer, or sit watching the clouds for hours without speaking, they are often closer to peace than they've ever been. Your role is not to interpret these moments, it's to honor them, to create space for whatever they feel drawn to, whether that's scripture, nature, poetry, or silence, whether it's a conversation about heaven or a quiet request to hold their hand without saying anything at all. Because when someone reaches this place, they're not just saying goodbye to what was, they're making peace with what is and preparing for what may come next. And the greatest gift you can offer is to be beside them in that stillness, not to lead, not to question, but simply to walk gently with them, heart open, as they step into the unknown with G. If you've seen these signs in someone you love, it doesn't mean the end is coming tomorrow. It doesn't mean giving up. More often, it means they are slowly beginning to let go, with grace, not fear. This stage of life isn't about fixing. It's not about fighting what's fading. It's about being present for what remains. These whispers, the withdrawal, the dreams, the keepsakes, the quiet, are the language of a soul preparing for its final transition. And while the body may grow weaker, the spirit often grows louder in its own gentle way. For those walking beside someone at this stage, your role is not to cheer them out of it. Your role is to walk with them into it, to sit with them, to hold their hand without needing to fill the silence, to ask questions like, "What would bring you peace today?" Or, "Is there anything you want to share that you never got to say?" Sometimes, the most loving thing we can offer is not our words, but our attention. Not our solutions, but our stillness. This isn't about death. It's about presence. It's about dignity. And it's about honoring that final stretch of life with the same reverence we give to its beginning. Because when the end draws near, the soul often speaks in whispers. And we honor our loved ones most, not by trying to pull them back, but by listening deeply and patiently, by bearing witness to their journey with open hearts, steady hands, and quiet love. In those moments, we're not just saying goodbye. We're saying, you mattered, you're still here, and we'll carry you with us, always. If this video helped you understand what your loved one may be going through, or what you yourself may one day face, please consider subscribing to Elderly Truths. Here, we talk about the things no one else wants to, with honesty, heart, and deep respect. Leave a comment if any of these signs resonated with your experience. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. And if you're walking this journey with someone right now, take a breath. You don't need to have the perfect words. Just your presence is powerful. Until next time, be gentle with others. Be gentle with yourself. And remember, love is not in what we say, it's in how we stay.